Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. Welcome to this edition of Talk to Al Jazeera. Outspoken would be a good word to describe our guest today, but when you've been the head of the country's intelligence agency for 2 years and now more latterly described as a mouthpiece for the Taliban, well, perhaps outspoken isn't quite strong enough. Hameed was the head of Pakistan's ISI, its intelligence agency, between 1987 and 1989. These days, though, he's a vocal critic of the way Pakistan has aligned itself, at least publicly, with the United States in its fight against the Taliban. And it is that fight against the Taliban in both Pakistan and Afghanistan where we began our discussion. Is Pakistan, in your opinion, truly doing enough to combat the Afghan Taliban and the threat it poses? There are a lot of questions about Pakistan's commitment to this fight.
Well, Pakistani nation is not committed to this at all, because they deem it as somebody else's war, which has unfortunately been dragged into Pakistan. So really, if you go by the national ethos, then they are at variance from whatever Pakistan government is doing. And if you read Pervez Musharraf's book, In the Line of Fire, he has admitted that he was forced, arm twisted and scared and coerced into cooperation. It wasn't a willing cooperation to begin with.
But if that's
so such a cooperation will always have some kind of reservations, and I think those reservations have continued.
That's what I was going to say. That was Pervez Musharraf you talk about. We're very much under a different leadership now. They're doing the same thing, you believe?
The policy is the same, because they entered into an agreement, and I think in Abu Dhabi an agreement was signed between Benazir and Pervez Musharraf, and the Americans were the brokers, as well as David Miliband from the UK. So the idea was that the policies that Pervez Musharraf had set in line, those policies would continue rolling. In fact, not only have they rolled for the past 2 years in spite of democracy being in place, in fact, there has been a little bit of increase in this. The drone attacks have increased. The American security contractors are milling around in Pakistan, which is being resented by Pakistani nation. So if you look at the whole picture from a macro point of view, then you will see that the Pakistani nation is being torn between two demands: the American demand of their agenda and the will of the people of Pakistan. So the institutions are bound to be affected by it. It redounds to the credit of Pakistan Army and Pakistan intelligence that nothing has actually fallen apart so far. The discipline has held out, and it is one of the greatest assets of Pakistani nation.
And yet we have a recent event with the apparent capture of Mullah Brada, the Taliban's second in command. Joint operation, it seems, between the Americans and the Pakistani ISI.
Yes, this is a bit surprising, but I think American pressure has become now more inexorable than it was in the past. And it is probably because Americans now want to work out an exit strategy, and they want to make their people believe that they have met with victory. So I think it has much more to do with what I describe as front-loaded withdrawal. They are withdrawing, but they are carrying out the surge at the same time. They have launched operation against what they describe as Taliban stronghold, but I don't subscribe to that idea. It's a very, relatively speaking, very small operation. They are using the sledgehammer to kill the fly in that area of Marja. So basically, the shift that you might see is in order to convince the American people that we have won the war, I mean declare victory and then get out.
But isn't this pressure from the United States conceivably a good thing? Bringing Pakistan in as a true ally, not just a veneer of an ally, an actual ally, a joint operation in this case of Brada, which has actually yielded success and shows that progress is being made by quote-unquote true allies.
Perhaps that may be so, but on the other hand, it could be simply because Mullah Brother somehow, for some reason, for personal errand or because of an injury or because of medical treatment, he may have come there, and American picked him up, and then in that case it becomes impossible for Pakistan not to act in concert with the Americans.
US envoy Richard Holbrooke was in Doha recently, and he told Al Jazeera in an interview that the leadership of the Afghan Taliban, the real top echelons, were undoubtedly in Pakistan. Now, we've seen with Mullah Brada that is the case. With the rest of them, do you think that's the case? That
no, I don't think so. They keep coming, going, some of them, individuals. But to say that there is a Quetta Shura which is being harbored by Pakistan and it's nested in Quetta itself, I think that's humbug. That's not true. And American intelligence has failed in the past, as you see, weapons of mass destruction and 9/11. Osama bin Laden has not even been charge sheeted. So, they don't have any solid information on him.
They could argue they were proved right in this case, wouldn't they? I mean,
that's just one sort of one indicator only, but you know, one sparrow does not make the spring. That kind of a thing. It's just one odd incident. But we'll have to see if more people are caught. If a brother has been caught, why not Mullah Umar? Because Mullah Umar is really the key to the whole operation in Afghanistan.
Do you think there's any realistic chance of Mullah Omar being captured?
I don't think so. As far as I know, during the Russian occupation of Afghanistan, he ventured into Pakistan only once, and that only in Chaman area, which is on the border, and that was for medical treatment when his eye was damaged. So, he came to Chaman for treatment and he went back. Mullah Umar is one person who has never gone out of his own den.
Let's look more specifically at the Pakistan Taliban and Pakistan's way of dealing with the Taliban. I guess I'm going back to the offensive we saw in Swat Valley, North Waziristan as well. It became known as a battle within, a fight within its own country, which greatly affected the civilian population of Pakistan. Was it the right way to go about it? Can it ever be deemed a success?
I think it will become, because the propaganda hype, the Western media, the BBC started putting out pictures that Pakistan's nuclear assets were in danger or the imminent danger of being captured by these Taliban fundamentalists or extremists. I think one thing was propaganda. The other was that these Taliban are not the Afghan Taliban. Please remember that.
No, Pakistan Taliban.
They are Pakistan Taliban, and they are driven not by an Islamic spirit or spirit of freedom or an exalted purpose as the Afghan Taliban are. These are driven mainly by revenge motivation, because their places are being bombed, targeted by drones, and that Pakistan Army has been taking action against them, entering into agreement and then going back on those agreements under American pressure. So, these people are out to take revenge. If you go back into history, there is a thing called Pakhtunwali among the Pashtun tribes of Pakistan and Afghanistan. Pakhtunwali is an honor code, and one of the principal clauses of that honor code is badal. Badal means taking revenge. Now, these young people are taking revenge, and they have been armed, given money, financed, supported and trained from across the border in Afghanistan by hostile forces, and among them the Indian intelligence, Mossad is there, the Israeli intelligence, the Afghan intelligence itself of the Kabul regime, and of course, they are provided the umbrella by the Americans. So, it is not going on only in these areas, in these parts of the northwest frontier province where Pashtun tribes are residing, but also in Balochistan, and Pakistan has been crying hoarse over these issues that Indians are stabbing us in the back while we are cooperating in war against terrorism, but Americans are allowing the Indians to play dirty games against Pakistan.
The government would say that Swat was a success, that maybe North Waziristan was as well.
Swat was a success undoubtedly. So far Swat is settled, Swati people were unarmed, they were not. Swat is not a tribal area incidentally, and all Swatis are not Pashtuns, but as far as Waziristan is concerned, South Waziristan, it is one homogeneous tribe, and they have been fighters for centuries. They carry bare weapons and they can fight it out. The British learnt it the hard way, but I think it may be a little too early to pass a judgment on this, because now the winters have set in, there is heavy snowfall in that area. The military is basically camped in various areas of South Waziristan, and hopefully it would not give rise to a guerrilla type of warfare. Already one Cobra helicopter has been brought down by them. Among them, the casualties was a brigadier and 2 majors. So, it's a bit early to think that this would not spread to the other tribal areas.
We're speaking to the former head of the Pakistani ISI, Hameed Gull, here on Talk to Al Jazeera. Back with more in a moment. Welcome back to Talk to Al Jazeera. Our guest this week is Hameed Gull, the former head of Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. Mr. Gull, thank you for staying with us. Let's talk about the ISI specifically now. It's under a cloud all the time. There's always suggestions of involvement with shadowy groups, if I can put it that way. In your opinion, in 2010, is the ISI clean?
Well, it's very difficult to say because the rank and file maybe in some cases, individual cases, I won't say as a matter of policy, they may be doing things which happens because after all a nation's attitude change slowly like the smooth curves of a railway track. But when you want to take a U-turn, then some bogies will get derailed. And we have seen the tribesmen falling against Pakistan Army, and we have suffered a lot of casualties among them, Lieutenant General downwards. Many things are happening to Pakistan. Pakistan is paying a huge price for somebody else's war. But Pakistan, this war is generally perceived everywhere in the society, and the institutions are no exception because they are part of the society, they are extension of the society, that this is somebody else's war and that we have been unfortunately pushed into it. So, that is one aspect. The other is that a big question whether it is in the interest of Pakistan that America and particularly India stay permanently, win and stay permanently in Afghanistan. Would that be in the long term interest of Pakistan? Pakistan seems to be sandwiched on both sides. The Indian front is still very active. Indian generals are every day almost sending out threats to Pakistan. Then there is on our back, we have now India, Mossad, all the hostile forces, and they have the umbrella of America. And as I told you earlier, they are fully involved in Balochistan. They want to cut Pakistan to size. So, it is not in Pakistan's interest. Therefore, if one were to see, and especially after Obama's first December speech, it has become clear that Taliban are the future and Americans are the past of Afghanistan.
So where does a group like the ISI fit into all of this? Can a group like the ISI operate on its own and in the interest of Pakistan?
At a very minuscule level, I would say yes, but at the policy level, no. But Pakistan, if
because they're dictated
generally what the Western press has been writing is that the ISI is reluctant to act against some of the groups of Taliban of Afghanistan. If that be so, one can understand it because after all, you do not, Americans came from 12,000 kilometers away and they are in Afghanistan now, but they say they will go away, but Taliban will remain there, the Afghans will remain there. And Taliban represent the mainstream sentiment of the Afghan nation. Remember that Afghan nation is very sensitive about two things, their faith and their freedom, and both are endangered in Afghanistan today. So, the resistance which the Taliban fighters are putting up against the occupation forces is essentially a national resistance. It is in line with the grain of national sentiment. So, if the Americans go away tomorrow, it will leave Pakistan totally in the lurch if Pakistan was not at least appearing to be a little bit soft. So, the Western media's propaganda is serving Pakistan's cause that Taliban can say that in spite of everything, Pakistan has done a lot of wrong things against us, but it hasn't gone to the extent that we would be defeated.
You talk about Pakistan appearing soft. What about if we talk specifically about a group like Lashkar-e-Taiba, where there have been purported links in the past? President Zardari has said there were links developed in the old days when dictators used to run the country. That was a quote from President Zardari. Again, is there still a cloud over intelligence links to a group like that?
I don't know. One doesn't have to really take Mr. Zardari seriously. not only in this case, in many other cases also, unfortunately. But the point is that Lashkar-e-Taiba is specifically oriented to Kashmir, and it is a Kashmiri organization, it is not a Pakistani organization. So, Kashmir is a legitimate case where freedom struggle is going on. Indians are indulging in human rights violation. They are going back on the resolutions that they themselves signed, that's consensus resolution. If the right of vote, right of choice has become redundant in the eyes of the Indians who are never tired of calling themselves the world's largest democracy, tell me, if the right of vote is a right of choice has become redundant, then French Revolution has become redundant, the United Nations Charter has become redundant, all the countries who won their freedom as a result of armed resistance, they should not have got this. I think there is absolutely no logic why this right of self-determination should not be given to the people of Kashmir.
So with all our focus on, when we look at Pakistan, the fight against the Taliban, the battle within, as it were, should we perhaps be looking a lot closer at Kashmir at the moment?
Yes, we should be. Pakistan, because Afghanistan is another country. Kashmir is still to decide its fate. And we consider it as our part, because if the Kashmiris were to be tomorrow given the right of choice, we absolutely believe that they would vote for Pakistan. So, they are very much our citizens, and whatever we are doing, we are supposed to do that. We are committed to do that.
Let's talk specifically about you personally.
Yes.
You are a man who, as we said, former head of the ISI, worked with Pakistan intelligence. You are consistently and constantly accused of being a Taliban mouthpiece, with link to them. How do you react when you hear accusations like that?
I have no links with them, but I support their cause morally. I am a moral voice in support of them.
Because
it is their right, because two things happened in Afghanistan. One was when the Russians invaded, the whole world stood up behind the resistance fighters, didn't they? That was a morally good cause. We supported it. And now another superpower, without sufficient evidence, comes in and attacks the same country. Hapless, poor, tattered, shattered by wars and by internal fighting. And then these people start resisting. So, is it not morally correct to support them?
it wasn't completely without reason. There was obviously the 9/11 attacks which prompted the
Where
invasion in the first
where is
place.
the proof of that? Because I know that Taliban, Mullah Zaif himself came to me when he was ambassador in Pakistan. He said, we have offered to the Americans that you try him out. Why don't you try Osama bin Laden? We will produce him before you, but he has to be tried under the Sharia law, not under the American law. First of all, we have no faith in American law, like in Dr. Afia Siddiqui's case. Who has faith in American law? Who create Guantanamo bays, Abu Ghraibs and rendition camps and torture flights, etc. You know, this is the American law as far as their own citizens are concerned may be very good, but American law to be applied to other nationality, other people is absolutely wrong. Now, in case of Afia Siddiqui, for instance, the American law says the jury of peers has to be there. Here is the jury, none of which is a Muslim woman wearing a hijab. They cannot understand that being strip searched is such an indignity to a Muslim woman. So, how can that jury give the right verdict? So, basically there are flaws in their laws. Besides, their point of view was that George Bush had said he wants Osama dead or alive. That means punish had already been announced on him, wants him dead or alive. And I know that this is what George Bush said. So, they said like hell, we will not allow this to happen, because he has taken oath of allegiance on the hand of Mullah Umar, and therefore, from every point of view, from any angle of law, he is a citizen of Afghanistan. We shall not hand him over to American law.
When you say that you sympathise with the Taliban's cause, do you ever worry where you might land up because of that viewpoint?
No, the Americans took my name to the United Nations Sanctions Committee, UN Security Council Sanction Committee, but it was Chinese intervened, and they stopped my name being put on the terrorist list. They did their best. They have not allowed me. The UK in year 2000 they did not allow me. That means they were planning at that time 2001. 2001 in my opinion there is a mystery, it is an enigma, it needs to be resolved. And this is a very basic question. Was it Al-Qaeda who carried it out? Osama bin Laden is on record to have twice said that he did not do that, although he said, I pray for the people who carried it out, but I did not do it. So, that mystery has still to be resolved. Besides, the whole operation was planned in Hamburg, Germany. Why was Afghanistan attacked? So, there are Al-Qaeda groups now in France and UK and everywhere else. So, each of these countries must be attacked by them. I don't agree with this. This is totally wrong. The world community was befooled, they were coerced, they were arm twisted into cooperating, and I think this is where the Americans went wrong.
Final thought from you. I looked at your own personal website before we did this interview.
You did read that?
I did, and there was a banner, if you like, on the front page, and I'm quoting here, which said, "Fear is no policy, surrender is no option."
Yes.
Surrender to who?
Surrender to anyone. When your moral cause is right, you know that you are righteous, then stand firm and wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help, and it will come undoubtedly. Here is a tremendous lesson for us of history, that clash between moral and material. Whenever it takes place, moral always wins, no matter how moral appears to be weak in the beginning. But in the end, the moral will always come out with the flying colors. And here is one America, history's mightiest power, joined in by all, for want of a better word, by all the world establishment, the armies, political support, money, etc. Everything was given to them. And opposite them were whom? Nameless, faceless, addressless individual groups. And what happens then? Can't you see that this is an immutable law of nature, that eventually those nations which refuse to surrender, my dictum, fear is no policy and surrender is no option, but when you refuse to surrender, nobody can defeat you.
Hameed, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.